Westuha min freon and welcome to yet another video. Please, my friends, look at the screen and you will see yet another proof of the fact that Tolkien fandom all around the world has united in honoring and respecting Professor Tolkien, respecting the law, and rejecting the atrocity that will be coming out in September 2022. But it is not only now that Tolkien fans united in love for the good things and the beautiful things. We have always been there, unlike Amazon tries to make us think. If you have seen this particular promotional video, they say at the end of it that you have finally found your people thanks to Amazon. You have found your people thanks to the fact that you'll be able to cosplay as the hand-me-down knockoff elves from the Rings of Power. It is not so, my friends. Please let me share a story with you, a personal story that I believe has happened in one, form or another all around the world. And I believe that all of you, my dear Tolkien fans and my dear fantasy aficionados, have a story like that. All of you, I'm sure, have a story similar to mine. So let us begin. When I went to university and I was first writing my bachelor thesis, and then 2 years later I was writing my master's thesis. Both of those texts I wrote on Professor Tolkien, of course. The first one was on the use of runes in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, because as we well know, Professor Tolkien, did use runic letters quite often in his books. For example, in The Hobbit, we can see runic letters on the map of Erebor. And then, probably most famously, there was the rune D, which designated the secret hidden door on the Lonely Mountain. He there used a little bit tweaked, a little bit accustomed and changed old Anglo-Saxon runes, and it was only in The Lord of the Rings in which he devised his own system of runic letters called Cirth or Angerthas. And for example, among other cases, we can see them on the tombstone of Balin in the Mines of Moria. And then the master's thesis I wrote on the use of alliterative verse in Tolkien's texts, not only in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and the Silmarillion, but in his, and not many people know that, in his poetic work. You can find it on the internet, and they have been included in the History of Middle-earth collection, many alliterative poems, narrative alliterative poems that Tolkien wrote, and many of stories that Tolkien wrote first appeared as alliterative poems, and only then he rewrote them into a prose version. For example, the Lay of the Children of Húrin was famously first written as a poem, a long narrative poem in the Old English alliterative verse. If you don't know what the alliterative verse is, I shall provide a link in the description down below to my other video where I go through an article that I wrote for a university magazine where I explain everything about the verse itself and the way Tolkien used it. What is important is that when one writes, at least in my country, a thesis, you usually go to conferences where you present your results and what you're writing about. Sometimes you only go once, more often you go several times to several universities. Maybe you travel to some other city, some other town, maybe to some other country. And this particular case, I went to a different town, and of course, because I presented the subject matter in English language, there were guests from different schools and also from different states, different countries, from all around Europe. And so that happened that because I was talking about the alliterative verse, I did something that Tolkien did at the beginning of each and every series of lectures on Beowulf, the oldest Old English epic poem, also written down in the alliterative Anglo-Saxon verse. I recited the opening verses, which are also recorded on this very channel. I shall also provide a link in the description down below so you can check out what it sounds like. And it wasn't because of me that a lot of people were present at this particular conference. But of course, as each and every single conference, it was announced months before the conference took place. There were pamphlets and there were promotions on the internet, and invitations were sent to other schools and other universities, to other countries. And the room was crammed when it was my turn to go and to present my results. And later, when I was talking to the audience, to all the people sitting in the room, and it was the biggest room at the university, I was told that, of course, people enjoyed what I was talking about, and they admitted that I know a lot about the subject matter. I was very well learned and versed in it, but I think that if you want to write an academic text on something, you need to understand the subject matter very well. So that's not the question here. Many people told me that they traveled to this particular town from other cities, other towns, and even from other countries, just because there was supposed to be a lecture on Professor Tolkien. And that was already a couple of years ago, and I'm not that old. And then later, when the conference ended, we went to grab some drinks to a nearby pub. A lot of people went with me. And there I was, me and about 15 or 20 more people, all sitting around one table. The bartender looked at us a bit suspiciously. And, because there would be like a crowd of people went in, and we all started ordering beer and wine and something to eat. It was as if a group of dwarves from The Hobbit went in and started talking about the journey to the Misty Mountains and beyond to Erebor, the Lonely Mountain. And we were all talking about Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings and things that we enjoyed. And of course about the adaptations as well. We were talking about Peter Jackson's films and what we loved about the Lord of the Rings and by Peter Jackson, and what we didn't like about the Hobbit trilogy. Because at the time it was a bit fresher in our memory than it is nowadays. I mean, The Hobbit by Peter Jackson. And I looked around, and when I think about it now, if you took a picture of us, the group that was sitting around the table was the most diverse group you can possibly imagine. We checked all the boxes, my friends. There were people that were about 20 years old. There were people that were about 50 years old. There were men and women. There were Caucasian people, blonde and with blue hair, such as myself. There were a lot of people from Spain. I know that the Lord of the Rings fandom is very, very strong in Spain. There are people from Britain, from France and Italy. And there was even a person from Morocco. There were people from Scandinavia, and there were also people from Middle East. So that group was very diverse, and we had... I'm sure we didn't talk about it. Why would we? It didn't matter. I'm sure that we had many differences in faith. I'm sure that we had many differences in sexual preferences. I'm sure that we had many differences in political opinions and socio-political opinions, but it didn't matter. Because these things don't matter. We didn't talk about representation. We didn't talk about diversity. Those people who looked very differently from me, they didn't shout into the world, that they needed to be represented in the Lord of the Rings, and that they feel insulted by Peter Jackson that he didn't include any African-looking people in the Lord of the Rings. Do you know why? Because it doesn't really matter. Because it's not what Tolkien, what the Lord of the Rings is about. And I've been talking about the fact that Tolkien was inspired by medieval and pre-medieval Europe, Central and Eastern and Western and Northern, in creating his Middle-earth stories and his Arda. So, really, Tolkien knew what his characters should look like. And there are characters in the Rings of Power that don't belong there, as far as their looks and appearance goes. We are talking about simple facts and what Professor Tolkien wanted and didn't want. But true and normal people, I'm not even talking about Tolkien fans, normal people don't care. Normal people care about good entertainment. Normal people care about good escapism. Normal people care about good art, good craft, friendship, companionship, fellowship. And what Amazon and the shills on the internet are doing, they are not uniting people the same way this lecture united all of us years ago. They are dividing people precisely by promotional videos like these. And it shows, look at that, 1.3k upvotes, 25k downvotes, 25,000 downvotes in 6 days. And there are people on the internet who will be saying that you can't believe the extension on Google Chrome and that those numbers are not really true. But I think that it says something. I think that the amount of the number of downvotes has to be massively, even if it was true that the extension is not really that much true. I think that the number of downvotes should be massively higher than the number of upvotes when you look at the screen right there. So that's why I'm not really angered. That's why I'm not really angry at people like the OneRing.net who are telling me that I'm an istophobe, because I know I'm not. Every time I'm called an istophobe, every time they give me a name like that, every time they insult me, I remember that time in the pub after the not the lecture, the talk I gave at the conference. I remember the fellowship that sat around one table, that extremely diverse fellowship, and the long conversation we had about that one man we love, about Professor Tolkien, who united us all. So let me know in the comments down below if you also have a story like this. I would very much like to know about it. And thank you very much for watching, my friends. Thanks to you, I feel like that time years ago in that pub. Thanks to you, thanks to all the subscribers, all the people who are commenting under my videos, that you are standing with Professor Tolkien, that you're standing with me against the evil of Amazon and the grimas, the shills on the internet. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and Namarie.